Hello guys, welcome back to Defying Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Swallowed Star Part 366 based on novel. So let's start. Kill Milky Way Horde leader. The crowd of sector beasts covered space, and they rushed toward that bouncing star tower. They were almighty. And they were ferocious. The power was so strong that even Luo Feng felt powerless before it. Even if Luo Feng created a miniature universe and endless golden ocean at the same time. Faced with the absolute power advantage, Luo Feng wasn't able to do anything about it even if they were weak at defense individually. I was being too arrogant. Luo Feng remained in Star Tower the whole time. I thought I would be able to kill all 18,000 sector beasts with all the skills I have. However, when there are so many more sector beasts, the power is totally different. I can easily kill 2,000 sector beasts at once, but I can't even defend myself against 18,000 sector beasts. If he was more powerful, he could have immediately found his enemies' weaknesses and killed them. That had been the case when Luo Feng had been fighting 2,000 sector beasts. He was just as skilled in attacks as those sector beasts. Besides, he also had many other techniques, so he could instantly kill all 2,000 sector beasts, whereas now, he was being crushed. If their soul attacks are weaker, I can use my godly power, Luo Feng thought. If he could turn into a godly power ocean 1 square light year wide and drown all the 18,000 sector beasts, the attacks from the sector beasts would be neutralized by the godly power ocean and wouldn't gather. But Luo Feng didn't dare to use that method. Sector beasts were creatures that were great at soul attacks, and even if they were only at pinnacle level 2, they might have been just as great as Divine Eye True Master. If he turned into a godly power ocean, all those 18,000 sector beasts might perform soul attacks at once, hitting his godly power ocean and reaching the soul inside the heart of true God. Luo Feng didn't want to risk it. Indeed, he had strong willpower, yet it was only slightly stronger than Morosa. If his soul was attacked by 18,000 sector beasts at once, it would be obliterated. None of the valuables and techniques work, and godly power won't help, either. I have to create stronger blade techniques, or I need to fully comprehend the 3rd level of Wu Qi God. Only after that do I stand a chance of winning. Luo Feng fled, as he was trying to create new blade techniques and the 3rd level of Wu Qi God. He had felt destruction twice when he'd fought and killed Bedi, and he had obtained some experience from that. He had even fully comprehended the 4th level of Shi Wu Wing. Luo Feng had already been able to create techniques at pinnacle level 11 during his fight with Bedi, and now, he was at level 12. All he'd wanted before was to exterminate all the sector beasts with their origin, so he hadn't had the time or energy to create blade techniques at his level or study the 3rd level of Wu Qi God. I have to be more powerful in order to stand a chance. Under the black-striped stone pillar in the distant universe boat, the godly-powered avatar of Luo Feng was trying to create blade techniques and comprehend the 3rd level of Wu Qi God under the effects of time that passed 10 million times faster. He had already reached an exceptional level of power, so he could create the blade techniques easily. However, the godly-powered avatar failed to comprehend the 3rd level of Wu Qi God, no matter how hard he tried. What was the godly king of Jin thinking? I've already reached level 12, and if it weren't for the sector beasts, I could have become a true god of void space already. However, I'm still not able to use the 3rd level of Wu Qi God. Is it really a machine-type valuable for true gods? Even if it was created by you, godly king, it shouldn't be this powerful. Luo Feng had spent more than 3 years comprehending Wu Qi God while creating blade techniques, yet he had still failed to fully apprehend it. However, with his previous comprehension and the mysteries of destruction, he had created a blade technique called scimitar. When the blade was drawn, its structure was an arc, so he had given it a simple name. Although it had taken him over 3 years, he was in a place where time passed 10 million times faster, so it had only been 10 seconds. The sector beasts were forming teams of 10,000 members. The plus side was, the team had become much more powerful, but since there were fewer teams, each team was much farther from the others than before, so even after 10 seconds of fighting, other teams were still on their way there. What are you hiding in Star Tower 4, Milky Way Horde leader? Is this the #1 great being in Universe Ocean? I thought you were so powerful. You killed Bedi. Don't you dare to come out. All the cursing and laughing echoed in the space outside of Star Tower. Luo Feng looked outside through Star Tower, which was already surrounded by sector beasts. The 18,000 sector beasts occupied the entire space outside of Star Tower, leaving him no space to fly to. Get out. Luo Feng whispered in Star Tower. Not yet. None of the 18,000 sector beasts outside could see anything in Star Tower, and they couldn't see Luo Feng, either. Heh! Luo Feng's eyes gleamed. After only 10 seconds, he had already created the best blade technique he was able to create, given his current level of power. Although he still hadn't finished comprehending the third level of Wu Qi God, Luo Feng thought it might take him 100 times longer to actually finish comprehending it. If he spent much more time, another team of more than 10,000 sector beasts might arrive. He couldn't delay any longer. Time to fight. If I succeed, I'll provoke more sector beasts into coming here, thought Luo Feng. If I fail, then I'll just be blocked by them. I'll just hide in here, and I won't go out. With time going by, there will be more and more sector beasts. Then I'll deal with those 7 million sector beasts. It was either 7 million sector beasts or more. All 18,000 sector beasts blocked every direction around Star Tower. All of a sudden, a silver-armored being appeared from a side door at the base of Star Tower. He glanced around at all the sector beasts in front of him. It's Milky Way Horde Leader. He's coming out. Do it now. All the sector beasts in various directions wanted to take action, yet they didn't rush to do it. Each attack used all their power, yet Luo Feng could hide inside Star Tower with only one step. They wouldn't waste their energy, as Luo Feng was standing right beside the side door. Shua. Star Tower disappeared while Luo Feng became a godly power ocean 10 billion square kilometers large, surrounding more than 300 sector beasts. The sector beasts were overjoyed to see the godly power ocean. Attack. Shua. The godly power ocean disappeared while Luo Feng, clothed in silver armor, showed up again. He was already among the sector beasts. Luo Feng glanced around the group of sector beasts in front of him. Die. All the sector beasts were stunned. They saw an enormous, blurry godly eye floating in space. It seemed to the sector beasts that everything had disappeared, and the terrific willpower shocks contained in that godly eye pierced their souls like blades. Suddenly, the 900 sector beasts closest to Luo Feng were hit directly in their souls, which rendered them in such agony that they blacked out. This was Godly Eye secret technique. In the past, Luo Feng had observed the operation of the universe and reached a life gene level of 100,000 times, thus becoming a true god. During that process, his willpower had also transformed, reaching the pinnacle eternal true god level. Back when Luo Feng was only a universe master, he had used Godly Eye technique when fighting Morosa. Morosa had experienced unbearable pain, but his combat strength hadn't been hindered. But now, things were different. For one thing, Luo Feng's willpower hadn't been as strong as it was now. And for another, Morosa had been one of the top-tier sector beasts at the time, wielding exceptional willpower. As for the sector beasts around him, at level 2, they had relatively weaker willpower. Godly Eye secret technique. Just as Luo Feng performed Godly Eye secret technique, he waved Blood Shadow Blade in his hands. This attack represented his highest accomplishment at this moment. It was based on 4 basic laws: gold, light, space, and water. It also contained part of the destruction origin. All of them merged together to form this move. Hoo! A blade light flew out. It was certainly much faster than Luo Feng's speed of flight, reaching 1 million times faster than light speed. The light gleamed platinum gold. It looked like a blade-shaped star but burned billions of times brighter, and it indeed had an element of destruction. It also carried the eroding mystery of the gold. Hua! The gleaming blade light slashed at the 900 sector beasts closest to it. It was so powerful that it could rival destruction. The bodies of all 900 sector beasts that had been shocked crumbled, and the sectors inside their bodies cracked, killing them all. Be careful. Attack. Kill him. The rest of the sector beasts weren't worried. They were superior enough that their attacks could be delivered with delicate precision, even with Luo Feng flying among them, it was still easy for the sector beasts not to hurt their companions as they attacked Luo Feng. Hong! 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 6,000 light pillars appeared at the same time. "Break," said Luo Feng. His blade light shone. The platinum gold blade light struck, and after a massive sound, all those light pillars cracked and crumbled. Luo Feng bounced away as well. However, more than 300 sector beasts around him were annihilated. They were still affected by the shock waves. He resisted it. He's only at a slight disadvantage in the face of 6,000 sector beasts. He's getting stronger. The sector beasts were terrified. Luo Feng was able to fight 6,000 sector beasts now, and as long as he remained in their midst, their attacks couldn't be combined to fall on Luo Feng at the same time. After all, Luo Feng knew how to dodge them individually. Kill. Luo Feng used Godly Eye secret technique and the blade technique at the same time. He slaughtered the sector beasts, forcing them to run away. However, they were slower than him, and he had the ability to turn into an ocean and get among them again. They couldn't get far. Milky Way Horde leader has gotten stronger. There were 18,000 sector beasts. After he killed 12,000 sector beasts, we all tried to run, but we were still hunted by him. Only 1,000 of us got away alive. His blade technique is stronger than before. The news spread. All the sector beasts in the Land of Darkness were in a panic. More sector beasts started to hurry toward the hinterland, including those who hadn't intended to at first. They had to eliminate this threat. It was either Milky Way or the sector beast. In their attempt to encircle and suppress Luo Feng, more and more sector beasts were stepping forth to join in the siege, and the number was getting so big that Morosa had started to tremble in fear. "Master, the number has reached 7.9 million. This is quite effective," said the godly-powered avatar, revealing a smile. "Master, even when you are pitted against 18,000 sector beasts in a fight, you are able to defeat them and send them into a frenzy as they try to escape. In the end, no more than 1,000 managed to escape." Morosa was filled with admiration. "You are impressive beyond measure. Those sector beasts must have been scared out of their wits, but the fear instilled in them will compel them to go after your life at all costs. If they wanted to eliminate Luo Feng, their biggest threat, they had to annihilate his original body. As for trying to destroy Luo Feng's miniature universe, even if they truly managed to destroy his miniature universe, Luo Feng would still be alive and kicking. The only edge his enemy would have gained over him was that he would not be able to become a true god of void space with the loss of his miniature universe. On the contrary, the sector beasts would rather hope that this Milky Way Horde leader could quickly become a true god of void space and proceed to trying to transcend reincarnation. This region. The godly-powered avatar pointed toward the huge model. "Try your best to mark out all the troops here, then give me the numbers of sector beasts in these troops." "Yes, Master," Morosa responded right away. Numerals were being indicated on every group of consolidated spots of light. "The nearest troop in our vicinity has a total of 12,000 sector beasts." The godly-powered avatar nodded lightly. Right away, Luo Feng's original body set off to where the troop was to annihilate the sector beasts. A short while later, "Master, many troops of sector beasts in your vicinity are rapidly retreating, and they were all scattering off in all directions as they escape." Morosa promptly informed him. "Even if it is a troop composed of as many as 10 to 20,000 sector beasts, no one dares to fight against you anymore. What a pity. I have only managed to finish off a few hundred sector beasts." The godly-powered avatar shook its head. "If these troops are all scattered when they escape, it will be difficult for me to pull off a large-scale massacre. When the sector beasts congregated in one area, one strike by his blade would be equal to a few hundred sector beasts gone. How satisfying could that be? But now, all those sector beasts were dispersing in every direction. It would be much more troublesome trying to kill them. Now, all the sector beasts are gathered in the peripheral area of this region. Some troops have already reached 100,000. Morosa was feeling nervous because of the growing numbers. It could clearly see that the model was densely covered with spots of light that had formed many circles that surrounded a particular region. And Luo Feng was in that region. The number of sector beasts rushing toward the heart of that piece of land is still increasing, Morosa shouted in a shaky voice. It is almost 8 million now. The godly powered avatar merely observed in silence. Master, there are 8 million sector beasts there now. Morosa's two singular eyes dilated and became round, as if ready to pop out of their sockets. It did not know. In the face of this encirclement and suppression by a tremendous number of sector beasts, Morosa did not know how its master intended to deal with them all. 1 against 10,000, Luo Feng had achieved. His combat power had definitely attained the pinnacle level of a true god of void space, but he was, after all, only a true god. While he might not have lost out to a true god of void space in terms of power achieved, he still had to rely on a series of supreme treasures like Wu Qi God, Shi Wu Wings, and Blood Ghost Blade to unleash that level of combat power. However, this was almost approaching Luo Feng's ultimate limit. 100,000 sector beasts, how could he deal with so many? And how about 1 million sector beasts? One concerted attack from 1 million sector beasts was not inferior to an attack from an eternal true god. No matter how formidable Luo Feng was, he was merely a true god. The combined abilities of 8 million sector beasts would be comparable to an attack by a top-tier great being amongst all eternal true gods. The origin is the energy an eternal true god manages to bring out by relying on the complete chaotic golden wings, Luo Feng said. A part of it had the combat power at the level of the holy. Unfortunately, this combat power could only be used once. There will be nothing left after one use. However, it can draw the attention of 8 million sector beasts. That is practically a miracle. It might be difficult to attract even more sector beasts, but I still have to try my best. With Morosa's guidance, Luo Feng managed to sneak attacks on the other smaller-scale troops, as well as the scattered, idle sector beasts. This was why there were sector beasts dying from time to time. This greatly angered the entire sector beast race, and that anger coerced more and more sector beasts into participating in the plan to besiege Luo Feng. Regardless of how angry they were, their roundup plan did not show a trace of disorder. They were constantly gathering and building up their numbers. They were stationed in concentric circles surrounding the region where Luo Feng could be found. Even if they were met with sudden attacks, they maintained their positions. Even if hundreds of thousands of sector beasts were to be sacrificed, for the sake of the entire race, their deaths shall be worthwhile. No one will be able to stop the birth of the final king. The sector beasts were like a well-oiled machine. They were born to destroy. When there was no external threat, they would fight one another, but when a true threat came along, they would join forces, as though they all shared one big, common brain. There would not be any forms of internal conflict, and they would not fight one another. There would be incomparably precise coordination. Every single one of them would rather sacrifice itself than allow itself to be shaken by any external threat. Even Luo Feng's heart palpitated at their level of ruthlessness. Exactly what kind of life form has the universe ocean given birth to? Luo Feng shuddered. A being that represents destruction. Even in their breeding period, they are much too strong. A great being had to not only wield strong powers but, more importantly, have a powerful soul. The ruthless nature of these sector beasts ensured that none would be the least bit shaken when a sacrifice had to be made. This fact alone subjected Luo Feng to an intangible pressure. Luo Feng was trying his best to execute any methods possible to influence the sector beasts. He needed to shake them up. One after another, the sector beasts were dying. Yet, on the whole, they were still not bothered at all. They continued to gather. There were already more than 5 million sector beasts who had successfully joined the troops stationed around Luo Feng. Start advancing. Start advancing. Start advancing. The various troops of sector beasts had all started to advance slowly. From the land of darkness, more than 3 million sector beasts were rushing over at their fastest possible speed. If these sector beasts continued to take risks over and over again, Luo Feng would have the means to continue to kill them all over and over again. But these 5 million sector beasts that had gathered around him were pressing in on him from all directions, albeit very slowly. With such open and dignified mannerisms, the sector beasts made Luo Feng feel strangely embarrassed. He did not know where to start. They were too stable. The sector beasts were displaying such above-board behavior that it felt like a form of joint intimidation imposed upon Luo Feng. But what could Luo Feng possibly do? These 5 million sector beasts were divided into more than 10 troops. Luo Feng did not dare to put his head through the noose. Yet, no matter how he hid himself, with the circle around him was continuously shrinking in size, closing in on him. Ultimately, he would not be able to escape unless he made himself invisible and formless. This time around, Luo Feng's true motive was not to escape but, rather, to execute his great extermination plan. He had already reached a juncture at which it would be impossible to hide. If he did choose to hide, what would the sector beasts think? They would look around and wonder, what? We have done such a flawless job in our encirclement. How did Milky Way Horde leader manage to disappear again? Such a scenario would reveal Luo Feng's greatest trump card. Precise like a machine, without a trace of error, everything had been taken into consideration by the sector beasts. They continued to close in on Luo Feng most menacingly, causing his area of activity to continuously shrink as well. We have discovered Milky Way Horde leader. He is already trapped by us. A troop of around 500,000 sector beasts had mightily surrounded Star Tower. Within Star Tower, Luo Feng was shaking his head helplessly. Everything was proceeding as he had planned, but without being invisible and formless, he was, indeed, only left with the alternative of being entrapped. There was simply no escape for him. It's nobody's fault, said Luo Feng. They are innately strong, with boundless potential, and their tremendous numbers are enough to bring a shock to anyone. When faced with threats, they stay united. No wonder this is regarded as a crisis that even the willpower of the Origin is so scared of. Luo Feng shook his head. Attack! Attack! 500,000 sector beasts were keeping their distance away Luo Feng, but shortly after, they executed their attacks at the same time. All at once, a powerful blow, formed by 500,000 sector beasts, was transformed into a beam of light capable of annihilating everything. The beam bombarded Star Tower, and the impact sent Star Tower tumbling off at 1 million times light speed, howling as it flew off. Within the tower, all Luo Feng could feel was some vibration, with some of his godly power being consumed. Indeed, this is worthy of being a treasure used by the godly king. Luo Feng was safe within Star Tower. This was only 500,000 sector beasts. If there were really 8 million, treasures like the Boat of Mausoleum would likely have been shattered and destroyed when attacked. However, Star Tower was different. Even attacks by the godly king would not be able to do much harm to this tower. Milky Way Horde leader is hiding inside Star Tower. Star Tower is impenetrable. It simply cannot be destroyed. We have arrived, too. Another mighty troop of sector beasts arrived, bringing the number of sector beasts surrounding Luo Feng to a total of nearly 1 million. Time flew by. Troop after troop arrived to join the assembly of sector beasts. Every time a new troop arrived to join the assembly, the sector beasts would try to combine forces to launch an attack, and Star Tower would be tossed about like a ball at playtime. Again and again, Star Tower was bombarded and tossed far away, but regardless of how their numbers increased, from 1 million to 2 and 3 million, and eventually to 5 million, the sector beasts were unable to do any harm to Star Tower. The number of sector beasts that had gathered was slowly increasing, and there were sector beasts rushing over in great numbers from all around. 5.3 million, 5.6 million, 6 million. This is really a great number. Inside Star Tower, Luo Feng looked at the outside world. The sector beasts had massive bodies, and with several million of them gathered in his surroundings, the entire void space was obscured. The area affected could almost have been regarded as endless. No matter what, they are unable to break Star Tower with their attacks, Luo Feng said to himself. I think they are just waiting for all the sector beasts to gather before they join forces to execute their strongest attack. This is the only way they are willing to put everything to an end. If that attack is still unable to harm Star Tower, they will probably opt to force Star Tower into some other dangerous land. The core region of Tilted Peak sector had many dangerous lands. For instance, dangerous lands like 3 Extreme Abyss. The moment Star Tower fell in, it would not be able to come out. The sector beasts would face some problems, though. For one thing, those dangerous lands were outside the land of darkness. If they intended to get Star Tower out of the land of darkness, that would require a very long time. Plus, those dangerous lands might not truly be able to trap Milky Way Horde leader. Therefore, the sector beasts were not fully confident in this option. This was why they would not choose to attempt to throw Luo Feng into a dangerous land unless they were down to their last alternative. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Master, the number of sector beasts has already reached 7.6 million. Morosa was able to detect everything happening all the time, and its face was filled with worry. Previously, a total of more than 8.3 million sector beasts turned up. Soon, all of them will be here. Master, how exactly do you intend to escape this place? Morosa was very flustered. If Luo Feng died, he would die too. Then he would not be able to become king. 7.6 million already? The godly powered avatar laughed. Soon, it will be time to haul in the net. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Regardless of how calm he usually was, Luo Feng, who was inside Star Tower, was finding it a little difficult to contain his surging emotions. Looking outside at the endless sea of sector beasts, he saw them looking over at his Star Tower, which was 10 stories inside and out. They had surrounded and trapped him within the circles they formed. All of them wore fearsome and angry looks. 8 million. Luo Feng whispered softly. 8.1 million. 8.2 million. Finally, Luo Feng's eyes glowed. His eyes glowed so brightly that they were frightening. All are gathered here. All the sector beasts supposed to be involved in the roundup plan this time around had arrived. Soon, with concerted efforts, these sector beasts were going to launch one of the largest scaled bombardment against Star Tower. At this moment, Luo Feng's eyes flashed with an incomparably crazy look. He was waiting for those sector beasts to finish with their collective attack. Then, amidst the chaotic waves of impact, he would execute his origin. My humans, said Luo Feng. The pulse of my earth, my family, teacher. All of these. Everything that is more precious than my life itself, at stake in this one final fight. With slightly bloodshot eyes, Luo Feng outspread his wings behind him. The origin was now infused into the Shu Wu wings. The sector beasts were scattered everywhere in space. There was no end to it. They were all glaring at Star Tower in the distance. More than 8,300,000 sector beasts had gathered here. Apparently, Luo Feng killing Bedi and 18,000 other sector beasts had already made them anxious. They couldn't stand it anymore, and they sensed that if they didn't kill Milky Way Horde leader, he would kill them all in the future. And then the enslaved Morosa would be the ultimate king. They would rather die to prevent that from happening. Let us attack Luo Feng altogether. All 8 million sector beasts. We have to perform our greatest strengths this time. If we still can't kill that Milky Way Horde leader, we can only push him into some of the lands of extremists in Tilted Peak sector. We have to succeed. All the sector beasts transmitted their voices using their hearts. They glared at Star Tower in the distance. They were full of grudges, as they couldn't damage Star Tower no matter how. Prepare. 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 Orders were given, and all 8.3 million sector beasts were divided into 20 teams. They transmitted their voices and rearranged themselves so that the attacks could be combined as one. All the teams started to make attacks one by one based on their distance. Hong. One could see that almost 300,000 sector beasts had bloody light burning on their bodies. Then countless light pillars shot out. At the same time, they redirected them so that they could gather with others. Soon, all the attacks from those sector beasts merged together. The gleaming black pillars rushed at Star Tower from the back. Attack. And then, other teams also performed attacks one by one. Their attacks rushed toward the black light pillar. 2 teams. 3 teams. 4 teams. All the attacks rushed in the same direction and merged. They were all rushing forward as one, so that they wouldn't waste any of the energies from the combined attacks. The black light pillar kept flying forward, moving 10 million times faster than light speed. The farther it flew, the darker the color it became. And then, it became hollow. The hollow broke the space and flew. All the attacks from the sector beasts merged into the hollow. All the sector beasts glared at Star Tower. They were all looking forward to this. They hoped that under this attack, Milky Way Horde leader would be killed. They didn't want to push him into a land of extremists. After all, there was still a risk that Milky Way Horde leader would make his way out. Luo Feng, inside Star Tower, faced a terrific attack. He was holding his breath, waiting for the right moment to exercise his plan for great extinction. Master. Inside Luo Feng's miniature universe, Morosa was very anxious. Its master was surrounded by more than 8 million sector beasts. Luo Feng, said Primal Chaos City leader, watching eagerly. Only Morosa and Primal Chaos City leader were worried about Luo Feng's safety. As for other great beings in Universe Ocean, including the Earthlings, Luo Feng's wife Shu Xin, his sons Luo Ping and Luo Feng, his parents, and Tru Yang, none of them knew what was going on here. They didn't know that this was the moment that would determine the fate of all the races in Universe Ocean. Luo Feng's eyes looked confident and unyielding. The destructive, apocalyptic, silent hollow collided with Star Tower. It was silent as it struck Star Tower. It aimed to erode and damage Star Tower, but Star Tower was indestructible, it couldn't do anything about it. The energies contained in the hollow burst out and splashed everywhere. Hong. The result was a massive, destructive clamor. The shock waves spread everywhere, and Star Tower bounced away into the distance. How did it go? Did Star Tower crack? None of the 8 million something sector beasts could see anything. The shock waves were so strong that they annihilated the space, giving them no sight. And they couldn't see anything that happened at the center of the explosion. Just as they were feeling anxious about the result, Luo Feng was trying to control Star Tower and slow it down. Freeze. Under the burning godly power, Star Tower finally stopped. It turned around. The spreading shock waves were being weakened, and the time and space around them began to stabilize. And then, the sector beasts in the distance could clearly see everything that had happened. Hua. Star Tower suddenly grew to 9 light-years tall. A giant being, who was also 9 light-years tall, stood in front of Star Tower. He wore gleaming silver armor, and the 5 pairs of silver wings on his back were wide open, covering the endless space. The fate of billions of races in Universe Ocean, whispered Luo Feng. The fate of the humans. The fate of the Earthlings. The fate of the people I love. Everything that I guard with my life. Luo Feng, who was 9 light-years tall, opened his wings. His eyes were filled with hope as he whispered, "This is the moment." All 8 million plus sector beasts clearly saw the silver-armored giant that was 9 light-years tall. They were furious that Milky Way Horde leader was still alive, yet they were joyful that he had finally stepped out of Star Tower. Also, they were amazed that Milky Way Horde leader had become so enormous. Kill him. Attack again. The sector beasts tried to reorganize themselves. However, Luo Feng wouldn't give them a chance this time. Just as his body became 9 light-years tall, Luo Feng waved the wings on his back and infused the origin with his burning godly power. Die out. Luo Feng whispered, but his voice sounded absolutely cold. Either the sector beasts died, or everything he defended died. Kill all the sector beast. The 9 light-year tall, silver-armored giant waved the 5 pairs of gleaming wings on his back, and just as the 8 million something sector beasts were about to attack, they were stunned. All of a sudden, from the edge of the white wing above all the other wings, a mesmerizing light shot out. Endless traces of blade light. They were like flowers, and they were incredibly fast. They immediately flew across a vast area, covering the region. At that moment, there seemed to be flowers raining down, falling on each of the sector beasts' bodies. Kai. Against the beautiful flowers, the bodies of sector beasts were slashed easily. As soon as they were touched by the flowers, they were lacerated, including the sectors within their bodies. Beautiful. Silent. All of space went silent. There weren't any voices. A mighty, eternal true God was bestowed such a top-tier machine-type valuable in the ancient civilization, and he had triggered the highest level of the chaotic golden wings, storing his energies in their origin. There were tons of great beings in the ancient civilization, and to survive, that ancient being had stored as many energies in the origin as possible so that he could survive in battle longer. Even though Luofeng had consumed some of the energies in the origin, they still rivaled all the energies in the body of that ancient being, as it had taken him a long time to store so much energy. At that moment, they all exploded. From the edge of the sixth wing, white wing, a blade of light flew out. It was so powerful that it could have rivaled the power of an attack from some of the holy. It was certainly much more powerful than the hollow, the combined attack from all 8 million sector beasts. Before that terrific attack, everything was turned into empty space, including sound. 8 million sector beasts were scattered across an area of several square light years. Now, they were surrounded by the endless, beautiful blade light. It was mesmerizing and perfect, and those blade light flowers were reflected in the eyes of all the sector beasts. Beautiful? No. They were horrified. All 8 million plus sector beasts were terrified. They were facing an attack that they couldn't handle whatsoever. It was an attack that could only happen when an eternal true God used a top-tier machine-type valuable. It was an attack that stemmed from so many energies that they were terrified and desperate. However, no matter how desperate and terrified they were still sector beast. Sector beasts who were born for destruction. Kill. All the sector beasts were struggling with all their power. Some of them performed attacks, some performed sector light portal, and some attempted to flee. However, Luofeng, who was 9 light-years tall, waved his wings. An area of several square light-years in front of him was like a beautiful picture, and it crumbled instantly. The beautiful picture, which was several square light-years in diameter, was annihilated. Everything was annihilated. Everything turned hollow. The endless blade flowers swept across the area of several square light-years, and they kept marching forward until they rushed out of the land of darkness. They rushed into other lands of extremis in the core area of Tilted Peak sector. They only vanished after being gone for a long time. Luofeng didn't need to know how far the energies went, the energies that had been stored in their origin for so long and had been suddenly let out all at once. The only thing he needed to know was that those 8.3 million sector beasts that had previously been invincible were completely wiped out under that awesomely beautiful attack. It was like using a towel to wipe something up. Everything was wiped out, and no one was left alive. It was so powerful that even Luofeng was thrilled, even after learning a lot about the ancient civilization and speculating about other aspects. However, the most significant factor for him was being happy and excited. Luofeng's giant, 9 light-year tall body shuddered with exhilaration. Teacher. The first thing Luofeng did was to connect to the virtual universe using his godly powered avatar in the original universe. I did it. I did it. Luofeng couldn't have been more excited. As for the less than 1 million sector beasts scattered throughout the periphery of the Land of Darkness, they could clearly sense that all 8 million plus sector beasts were killed all at once. They were first dazed, then horrified. Like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.